Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video. So I'm on one of my Boltmas treks and I figured I would, while I'm waiting to wake my battery up. So it was freezing overnight, my car wasn't plugged in. So I'm charging at about 27 kilowatt right now because the battery is cold. Temperatures are still in the 50s, so it'll warm up eventually. We have several hundred more miles to drive today. But while I'm here, I did want to mention because I had watched the recent out of spec. What did they call it? The Eastern Edge, right? So it's a fun little series. They went from essentially the Canadian border in Maine, right, to Key West. And I'm not going to give any spoilers, but basically they went down the I-95 route primarily. And, obviously there's some, gamesmanship going on. There's some, they're trying to make it a competitive race. And if you didn't watch it, they just basically they drive a bunch of different models. And like I said, no spoilers, but the one thing I wanted to call out, and once you hear this, you might know how the race turned out because it involved, I think they wanted to do or focus on three-row SUVs. So it didn't look like they had the Cadillac Vistique available, which is unfortunate. That would have been a fun one to see run too. But they had the Cadillac Escalade IQ. They had two different Lucid Gravities, one of which was restricted to only using superchargers, and refreshed Model X, Rivian R1S, Ionic 9, and an ID Buzz of all things. And so the race, like I said, no spoilers, but the race basically went more or less as I would have expected it to go, uh, with the understanding that the Team Escalade IQ didn't use battery conditioning. And, we got pretty far into that video and things just weren't looking right to me, in terms of what my expectations would be. And then, about halfway through, or, well, I guess an hour into the last video, the team had mentioned, yeah, we can't get preconditioning on nav to work. And because of the way that they were mapping out and planning. Perfectly valid. I completely understand that. But GM wisely chose to include what's called manual preconditioning, um, as I watch my battery at 28 kilowatt. And they include what's called manual preconditioning. And I was confused when they said they didn't have any conditioning options, right, other than just letting the Escalade IQ charge for longer at a lower rate at chargers, which can work. But, they had gotten to the point where the battery was like 120 degrees while they were driving, not even while they were charging. And they had made the comment that they were told, or they were informed, that manual preconditioning only warms the battery. So if you are someone who owns an Ultium EV, if you're someone that owns a GM EV, no, battery preconditioning is just battery preconditioning. If it's too hot, it's going to cool the battery. If it's too cold, it's going to warm the battery. So yeah, if you're not using battery preconditioning, then the problem is, of course, you're talking about just thermal mass. Once your battery hits 110, 120 degrees, if you are constantly driving and constantly charging, I don't know that there's a way to even cool it down again at that point. You are going to run into thermal limits. You are going to overheat and cook that battery. And so my recommendation for you, and I understand that 99% of all EV owners will never road trip their car in that way. If you do, and you have an Ultium EV, and for whatever reason you can't do preconditioning through navigation, use manual preconditioning. If you do have like an OBD2 dongle or whatever, Torque Pro or whatever, to see the internal battery temperature, you should be activating, in my opinion, you should be activating manual preconditioning when you're at least 30 minutes out from a charger if your battery is over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Because what's going to end up happening is, even when you plug in, your car is going to be needing additional power for cooling the battery. Usually it triggers, and this, I'm basing this on a pre-Ultium GM EV experience set, right? But generally speaking, the way I've seen GM set the parameters for cooling and heating the battery, when there's additional power available, once that battery hits somewhere between 90 to 94 degrees Fahrenheit, it will start actively cooling, which is the same behavior that I would expect from manual preconditioning. And then if you're hooked up to power but the car is turned off, it will sometimes allow the battery to get up to 100 degrees before actively cooling it. So there's some wiggle room there, but like I said, I would expect that if your battery is already starting to hit 90 degrees or so, you want to manually precondition to cool your battery before you arrive at a charging station. And the big reason for that is it's going to allow you to charge at a higher rate for a longer period of time. So yeah, I wanted to say that because, like, I can't be the only one who watched that video and sort of scratched their heads and said, if you weren't even, preconditioning the battery. So basically the race turned out to be a a leisurely drive in a Cadillac Escalade IQ versus two Lucid Gravities and a Tesla Model X that were burning it to the destination as quickly as they possibly could. So I just wanted to call that out because I thought that's kind of unfair for the Escalade IQ. I don't know that it was a valid representation of what the vehicle was capable of, because they said at the very beginning of the episode, right, that it really was the Escalade IQ's race to lose, and driven properly and managed properly, I think that is still the case, based on what I observed. But yeah, you kind of, if you're gonna really push a car like that, you have to use battery conditioning, and if it's not available through nav, then you need to use it manually. So, and hey, you know what? I'll put this out there, Kyle, Scott, Out of Spec crew. If you ever want to do one of those races and have a slot for me, I'm happy enough to join you and help out, right? So I mean, those races are fun, they look fun, but yeah, when you have someone in a vehicle, you really want to make sure that they know the vehicle well enough to drive it, because what you have right now is it's almost a third, a third, right? A 33% split between driver skill, charging infrastructure, and vehicle, and maybe 1% X factor, and everything else is it's really mostly in the hands of if the crew knows how to pilot the vehicle to the best of their ability. Yeah, in that case, I think they kind of let the Escalade down a little bit, the Escalade IQ. So hopefully, in the future, they get it right. But yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. I just wanted to call that out because I saw that and I was like, wait, what? Wait, what? You're not using preconditioning? That's crazy. So, and like I said, as someone who's driving a GM EV without manual preconditioning, I feel it. I really do. So anyway, if you haven't checked it out, I'll put the links to that video series down below. It's a fun series. You know, it takes a while, but hey, it's maybe better than binging like MCU reruns or whatever. So, as always, thank you for watching.